How are you? How's the boat? What's new?
They can dazzle us with dance. They can seduce us with songs. Yes, there's a strong argument that at their very best, musicals show cinema achieving its artistic peak. Here, we're exploring those magic moments when choreography and choruses combine to create an experience that lifts us out of ourselves completely. Whether the musical source material is a hit stage show or pop stars trying their luck on the big screen, song and dance spectaculars can sweep a film audience away like nothing else.
For a kid from a small street, I did very well on Wall Street.
Especially when the stars align in scenes like this, one of the genre's most iconic routines featuring two genuine Hollywood icons.
Give my thanks to the one who broke my heart, the one who broke my heart, the one who broke my heart. In Little Rock.
This dance, from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, helped elevate Marilyn Monroe to Hollywood superstar status. But it would have been nothing without the presence of the great Jane Russell.
Marilyn had never had a dressing room before, so they gave her her first dressing room, and she was afraid to come out on the set. She would get there much earlier than I did. I would get completely dressed in an hour, and other actresses would come in anywhere from 5:30 on. And you had to be on the set at 9 o'clock. I would come in at 8, and they would have my breakfast ready, and they would be rolling my hair dry, and I'd be putting and I was on the set at 9. Well, Marilyn wasn't there, and she'd been in since 5 or 5:30. So her makeup man told my makeup man, Shotgun, that Marilyn was just nervous about coming out. He says, she's all ready, but she just, And Howard Hughes was getting a little irritated.
Hawks?
Hawks, I mean.
It's almost as if you were his go-between, is that true?
Well, we were friendly. We were very friendly. And I felt like she was a little sister, that you could help along. And the thing was, she had a coach on the set. And instead of looking to the director after a take to see if it was okay, she would look to her coach. Mm. You don't do that with Howard Hawks, honey.
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes captures perfectly Hollywood's golden age at its most intoxicating. And that era has kept its hold over movie makers ever since. Those stars who over the years pulled on their dancing shoes and burst into song, touched audiences in a way that other big names just couldn't. And right at the top of everyone's list of favourites were those two giants of the genre, the astounding Fred Astaire and the genius Gene Kelly. In 1945, the pair came together for this routine in the film Ziegfeld Follies. 3 decades later, in 1976, they were side by side again and being interviewed by Barry Norman, talking about why their distinguished careers hadn't seen them joining forces more often.
You say why we have never danced together since? Well, there were various reasons, I suppose. When we were at Metro at the same time doing separate films, he always had something to do, a lot of things to do, and I did too, and they took a lot of preparation time to get them, and somehow or other, nobody came up with a story or said, gee, how would you guys like to do this, or we'll want you to do it, or anything, because I don't think they even put one together.
May I add to that also that I secretly suspect, and I certainly can't write it in blood, that the studio was I know, as Fred just said, we're working separately. He'd be teaming up with Sid Charisse, and then I'd be with Judy Garland, and he'd be with Judy Garland, I'd be with Vera Ellen, and then he'd have Sid Charisse. So they're making twice the money out of us. And I think the studio had financial secrets on their mind. And of course, I never liked Fred, so that was another reason.
Well,
In actual fact, Fred and Jean were talking to Barry because they had collaborated properly on the musical compilation movie That's Entertainment 2. Fred was 77, Jean a sprightly 64, and even though Fred originally refused to do any dance routines in the film, in the end, Jean managed to tempt him into it.
Much more in store. The world is a stage. The stage is a world of entertainment.
We did a few little things, but we certainly didn't try to compete with ourselves of 10, 20, 30 years ago. That would have been foolish.
Who was the boss of you two? I mean,
he was my boss until I punched him in the nose. And
Yes.
you know that didn't hurt.
Fred, it's very difficult to work with Fred because he's very, very physical.
When you've got Fred and Jean looking back on the golden age of musicals, the natural impulse might be to say they don't make them like that anymore, and probably won't ever again. But whenever musicals do ever fall out of favour, you eventually find them bouncing right back again. And just 2 years after Fred and Jean's reminiscing, the biggest movie everywhere was a brand new musical. Grease was the word, and the time and the place was September 1978, and the film's premiere at the Empire Cinema, Leicester Square. You didn't get this with The Sound of Music.
At this stage, the premiere's promoters were becoming increasingly anxious. The uneven struggle outside was clearly being lost. Efforts were made to contact the stars to keep them away, but they were too late.
Grease mania, of course, centred on John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John, the on-screen power couple of 1978. And the power they were supplying...
what are the pressures of being a sex symbol?
Well, I don't know if there's I don't know if there are any pressures being a sex symbol alone. I think probably the pressures come from you know, working a lot and the sort of dailiness of this type of life that I'm leading.
Yes.
So
The pressures of being a star.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm enjoying it, but I guess you know, there are days when it gets to be a bit much, maybe.
Yes.
Summer loving had me a blast.
Summer loving happens so fast.
I met a girl crazy for me.
Met a boy cute as can be.
Summer days drifting away to other summer nights.
Tell me more, like does he have a car?
Grease was a rather amazing experience. I don't know that I'd be as lucky next time because the whole atmosphere on the set was rather like well, it was just like it looked. We had a great time and we were all dressed up and we all thought we were 17 again.
Yes.
And I think it was just a very, very special time. And
Yes.
there was a lot of dancing and singing and it was very light-hearted. So if I could do that again, it'd be great, but I don't know if I'll be so lucky next time.
And was Olivia as lucky next time? Well, her next role after Grease was another musical, Xanadu, which tapped into the disco sounds of the day and gave her the chance to dance with Gene Kelly. Yes, Gene Kelly, in what would be his final movie role.
It's kind have a fantasy come true anyway, to be able to work with such a wonderful man and such an incredible talent. I mean, I used to watch his movies and I never dreamt that I'd ever do anything with him. He's extremely professional, a perfectionist. He's great at what he does, so it's a pleasure to watch him, actually.
Hey, Parker?
I think musicals are coming back because I think people want to escape and they want to be entertained. And I think I'm just very lucky that I'm in this era because it's something I've always wanted to do, and I've held out to do that kind of film and it just had the right qualities. I can't really explain it. It was just an instinct that I had. But there's more onus on me this time than there was in Grease. I didn't feel as much pressure, I suppose, as I will in this one.
To say that Xanadu is not one of the musicals that Gene Kelly would be most proud of would be an understatement. The film received universally appalling reviews and effectively killed off all Olivia's hopes of an enduring movie career.
It got what could be kind of called a panning.
Yes.
How do you react to these reviews?
Well, I actually stopped reading them, which seems to be the safest way. But luckily, we make the films for the public and not for the critics, otherwise we'd be in terrible trouble. And it seems to be that with Grease, for instance, I think the reviews were worse, or maybe not as bad, but equally bad.
Yes, they certainly weren't good rave reviews, that's for sure.
So we seem to think of as a good review as a kiss of death, so I'm kind of pleased.
Can I just put you, if you've not read the reviews, just put a couple to you just to see how you do react. An experience so vacuous it's frightening, crashingly disastrous, and a nightmare. Now, the question is, do you think they're good reviews, do you think it's as bad as that?
No, of course not. No, it's an entertainment film, and that's all it was. It was made for people to just go and enjoy themselves and have fun, and it's not Ben-Hur, it's a fun, entertainment, fantasy musical film, and I think it does that. Everyone that's seen it has enjoyed it, well, who I've spoken to, if they're telling me the truth, that is.
Yeah.
But the kids like it a lot, and I think it's good. It's definitely not as bad as that, anyway.
The song Xanadu did at least take Olivia to #1 in the UK charts, and the soundtrack to Grease was the UK's best-selling album for 13 consecutive weeks, proving that there's always a connection between the pop and the box office charts. This was most obviously the case in films that dropped stars like Elvis or Cliff into a story that involved them doubling up with a love interest, whilst plugging their latest single.
We're all going on a summer holiday.
These may not have been musicals in the same way that the movie adaptation of a Broadway hit is, and they were often dismissed as just froth for teenagers, but they were huge. Summer Holiday was one of the biggest hits at the UK box office in 1963, and here's Cliff touching on that film, but also comparing it to his own personal favourite musical.
Now, I'm delighted to see that you've chosen a clip from Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, one of the greatest musicals. Now, your own musical films came, well, they set a new standard for British films, certainly. They came pretty near to emulating the Americans, but what is the Americans' great secret?
Well, dare I say that it's finance. I mean, I've heard that before, and the more I think about it, I think that's probably what it is. They spend a great deal of money and time on making their films, and of course we, in general, don't seem to have that much time and that much money, and I think it does make a lot of difference, you know. If you're willing to spend, I don't know how long it must have taken them to film the sequence we're going to see, but it might have taken weeks, you know. And I think that sometimes we tend to get lumbered into, well, we got a 12-week stretch to make the film and the whole thing has to be done. Whereas I tend to feel that some of the American scenes might take 12 weeks to do one number, which is incredible, really.
Surprise. How do you manage to get to the pictures?
Well, it's not as difficult as one thinks, really. I think one can just go. I mean, I think the most important thing about going abroad, and I don't mean abroad, I mean just wandering about, is that one does it. And I always find that if you move quickly and fast, if you're walking through the West End, obviously you're asking for trouble if you stand around sort of singing Living Doll, because, you know, they're going to recognize you. But if you move fast, by the time people have sort of said, is it, isn't it, isn't it, you've gone, really. And I find that the best thing to do, I get a handkerchief out, and I pay my whatever it is to get into the cinema, and I go, and I sit there and watch it.
And this is what you like to see?
Love it.
You feel you want to applaud, don't you?
Yeah, you do. It's fantastic.
Wonderful choreography.
People call that the building the barn section, but I wonder whether it really can be called building a barn.
Hardly.
1 year after Cliff took his summer holiday, it was the turn of everyone's favourite new band to get in on the act. A Hard Day's Night was the Beatles' movie debut, but the studio behind it were more interested in the soundtrack album to go with it and thought the film might actually lose money. Instead, they got a huge box office success and critics and fans raving in harmony.
Good evening. Sometimes you go along and see a film about a pop singer and you get the impression he's been shoved into the film, rather like an unfrocked clergyman used to get shoved into a barrel. I mean, just to be exhibited, to be shown off, a sort of novelty to be gawked at. But the thing about the Beatles film, the one that's called A Hard Day's Night, the thing about this one is that the Beatles and the film seem to be all of a piece. The film really seems to have grown out of them. It seems to be a genuine account of the sort of people they are and the sort of music they sing. Now, once upon a time, you didn't expect anything from a film about a pop singer except to clap eyes on the chap. He was simply exposed like a holy object, and you were supposed to be so jolly thankful just to see him that you didn't worry about the corny plot or the illiterate dialogue. Well, the thing I felt about the Beatles film was that they'd paid as much attention to the lines and the camera work and the acting and the situations and so on as they would have done if the Beatles hadn't been in it. This is where the film started, Marylebone Station, and the producer, Walter Shenson, said,
both the police and the railroad officials were most cooperative. Perhaps maybe they're Beatle fans, but things could have gotten out of hand and would have been disastrous had not all these people been most cooperative.
Curious the way a film unit can colonize anywhere. They set up their cameras and their lights, and the station becomes their territory. In time, you feel, the onlookers will organize themselves and sue for independence. The director of this film was Richard Lester, and he said,
we were allowed by the police to have perhaps only 1 or 2 takes. And during that time, there would be a lot of fans about, and this is fitting and proper that there should be fans about. But it did restrict us in the use of angles, the amount of time we had in a scene. The boys many times would arrive in a car, run out, do their bit, and get into a car facing the other way and tear off down the street. And police saying, how much longer are you going to be here the minute you set your tripod up?
The Beatles aren't the only pop act with a fascinating backstory and back catalogue, and over the years, filmmakers' raids on the pop charts have resulted in what's come to be called the jukebox musical. Films featuring songs that are already well-known hits. One of the finest examples came back in 2001, the Oscar-nominated romance Moulin Rouge, that brought together Nicole Kidman, Ewan McGregor, and a mouth-watering collection of familiar favourites.
Now you're in the world.
How do you do a scene like that? I mean,
it's not easy.
No, I bet hours of
very
work.
hard, isn't it?
Hideous.
Sorry.
No, right.
What we did, how we did that is we rehearsed it for like about a year and a half. We rehearsed the film for 4 months, which is really unheard of for any movie.
And Baz kept wanting to rehearse that scene.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah.
So we rehearsed initially. We were singing and dancing, and rehearsing some of the kind of crucial scenes, and that was one of them.
But I mean, so 2 actors get together. I mean, are you sort of frightened? Are you wary? I mean, what's
yeah?
the
Well,
what's
it's
the
kind of nervy. You know, it's always nervy meeting your leading lady, or you know. And I think you said it in a press junket somewhere. You always assume that the other person's going to be wondering why the hell you got the job. You know.
Yeah.
That's kind of the assumption in your head. So we arrived and we met. And we had lunch with Baz, and Baz is a great talker, and he loves to talk. How do you know he loves to talk? So he explained to us what he wanted to achieve with the film and how we were going to do it, and the whole thing. And then we were led to a room where there was a piano player and a piano, and we were given some music, and we were singing the next I mean, a couple of hours after we'd met, to each other, a duet. So it's quite an icebreaker. It's a hell of a way to meet somebody, yeah.
But what about when the opposite happens? When you meet people, your leading lady or leading man, you don't like them?
Well, it's really hard. It can be achieved, I think, you know, the kind of chemistry we achieved on the screen can be kind of worked at, but it's really hard. It's really hard work.
Oh, thank you.
What? No, with people you don't get on with. It can be achieved, but,
but we got
in our
on
case, it was just...
I read somewhere where you said you found it easier to sing in character than just be a singer. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, like I could never stand up here now and sing.
You couldn't? No. But that's very strange, isn't it? I mean, you become another person
as
with a voice.
As soon as I take on the character, yeah. But I find it very easy to sing to you. And
yeah.
Yeah, because whenever he'd sing that song, your song to me, it was just... Oh.
Elton John's songs, of course, got another cinematic showcasing years later in his hugely successful biopic, Rocket Man.
I prepared by being with him largely and having that wonderful privilege of being able to know everything, because you really can ask him anything. He's so much fun. I mean, he'll tell you everything.
We've also had an Oscar-winning turn from Rami Malek playing Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody.
Nothing really matters to me.
And Lady Gaga, teaming up with Bradley Cooper for their 2018 update on A Star Is Born, a story which was first filmed in 1954 with Judy Garland and James Mason, and then again in 1976 with Barbra Streisand and Chris Christopherson.
You know, it's really not like any of the other versions in the sense that these characters are completely different than the other ones. Jackson Maine, the character that I play, is a rock star who is successful, and the other ones, you know, his fame's dwindling. This guy can tour, and just the reality of today, you know, you can tour and have a canon, a library of songs, and you can make money until you die. And he also doesn't worry about being eclipsed by another person. Fame is not something he thinks about. And she plays not the ingenue character that's always there. She's 31 years old, and she's bitter because, not bitter, resigned herself to. I mean, I don't want to talk about your character without, you know, but it's your character now. But I am. Yeah.
Tell me something, girl. Are you happy in this modern world? Or do you need more? Is there something else you're searching for? I'm falling.
It took no convincing on my part. I mean, he came over to my house and we had a wonderful time together. I mean, as soon as he came in, we're both from the East Coast and we're both Italian-American, so I was like heating up pasta from the night before in the kitchen on the frying pan. We were eating on the patio, talking about life and family. And then he wanted to sing with me a song by Creedence Clearwater Revival, Midnight Special. So I was playing it on the piano and he started to sing and I was like, oh my gosh, Bradley, your voice. I was blown away by him. I mean, he sings from his soul, he sings from his gut, and when he sings, he's a storyteller. And I was just so moved by his passion, you know, for music and for this film. And quite frankly, it was him that had to convince other people to have me in the movie, not anyone trying to convince me. I mean, he really fought for me. And you can have 100 people in the room that are watching you and 99 don't believe in you, and one does, and that was him. So, you know, all my gratitude goes to him.
And then there are the Mamma Mia films, arguably the ultimate crowd-pleasing jukebox sing-alongs, with songs that are so well loved, it didn't matter if the cast weren't perhaps the world's greatest singers. Who cares?
So when you're near me, darling, can't you hear me? SOS. The love you gave me, nothing else can save me. SOS. When you're gone, how can I even try to
it was the last thing I expected,
Yeah.
to play in a musical, to play Mamma Mia. I mean, Mamma Mia for me was just a poster on the side of a bus.
Yeah.
I had no idea what it was about. It was, you know, I knew it was about ABBA, the music, and I certainly remember ABBA. I was over at my mother's house because my dad had just passed away. And I was at Mum's house and we were organising the funeral, sitting there with the priest and the undertaker and talking about the funeral. And I said, we've got to get the bagpipes. We've got to get the bagpipes for Dad because he was a great Scotsman. Anyway, I went out into the garden to stretch my legs and the phone went. And it was the agents and they said, how are you? I said, oh, I'm all right, I'm fine, we're okay. He said, anyway, we've got a job, Meryl Streep, Mamma Mia, Grease. I said, great, I'm in. I didn't even ask how much.
It was Meryl Streep.
It was Meryl Streep. It was Meryl Streep. And they said, will you see the show tomorrow night? And I said, yes, I'll go see the show. I went to see the show, had no idea what it was about. And I'm sitting there with my mother and my daughter, and she says, Daddy, who are you playing? I said, I forgot to ask. I don't know who I'm playing.
But you obviously knew there was singing and dancing. It must have been sort of a bit of an antidote as well. Phew, so, you know, a bit of joy and a bit of laughter and a bit of sunshine when you're going through.
It was brilliant. Well, anyway, the guy came out on the stage and he said his name was Carmichael. So my dad's name was Carmichael.
Ah.
That was a little clincher right there.
Really?
And the bagpipes and stuff like that.
Yes.
And so when I saw the show, it was just so joyous. I sat there and I thought, oh my God, what have I said yes to? And I kept on thinking, well, Meryl Streep's doing it, Meryl Streep's doing it. It's got to be good. And, you know, by the end of the night, watching it in London, I was on my feet, laughing, dancing.
As everybody is. And you get to stand there as Meryl Streep sings a big number to you, which you're just going to have a look at.
Winner takes it all.
I apologize if it makes you feel bad, seeing me so tense. No self-confidence, but you see, the winner takes it all. The winner takes it all. The game is all a lover or a friend. But we think that the winner takes it.
Talk about comfort zones, and I mean that's not her comfort zone normally either, is it?
No, I mean all of us put our neck out on the line for this, and that's what was so much fun about it.
She said she did it to embarrass the children. You know, the singing and dancing, she said they'll hate it. That's why she accepted the role. No embarrassment at all when you go to the premiere tonight, I hope, from you.
No, I just had the time of my life making this picture last summer, and I think everybody did. I mean, Colin Firth and I were just saying yesterday, said we think it was the best summer we've ever had, because it was such an ensemble, and singing these songs is so much fun.
When I was invited to sing along in Here We Go Again, the offer was irresistible.
What a mad day! Now I see everything in a different light. What a mad day! I was up in the air and she taught me a lesson outright.
Now, moving on to a tale where the winner didn't take all and the loser did rather well. In fact, Jennifer Hudson's whole story could have been lifted from a Hollywood screenplay. She ended up on Broadway in the musical Dreamgirls, and then saw all her dreams really come true. But her journey first started when she was eliminated from America's biggest telly-talent show, after Simon Cowell said she was out of her depth.
At that moment, when they said Jennifer Hudson is going home, you know, of course, naturally, I would feel down, but it was a split second, you know, and then I was like, hey, this is a great experience, and I have to take from this experience and use it for the next thing, and that's what I tried to do. And I knew, long as I walked away with my instrument that got me on the show to be eliminated, I'll be okay. And so I knew something was in store, and that was my exit speech. I said, you know, something in store, I don't know when, I don't know how, but I will be back. I just know I have to sink my way to it. I got a call from Binder Casting Agency, and also people seeing me on the show, which is why American Idol is such a great platform, because everybody was saying Jennifer Hudson for Effie White. as the auditions were happening for Dreamgirls, at the time, I didn't even know who Effie was. And I'm like, who is this Effie that everyone keeps saying Jennifer Hudson for? And so I guess, like, the agencies got wind of it, and they called me for an audition, and I went in and auditioned. I had to go through, 3 different auditions over a 6-month period.
So you went for the audition, not thinking really much about it, I'm sure, just thinking I'm just going to give it a go.
I just knew I wanted to sing the song. All I knew was "And I Am Telling You." I didn't know...
Which was a huge hit also for you.
And I was just familiar with the song, and I was like, I want to sing this song. And I used to say, I want to sing this song. And then eventually I heard, of the play, Dreamgirls, and then I was like, well, I want to do it on Broadway, but God always give you a little bit more than what you asked for. And I ended up in the film, and I'm like, okay. And when I started acting and, doing the scenes and everything, all I wanted to do was get my lines right and do the job that they hired me to do. That's all. I was like, okay, all right, they hired me to do a job. Let me do what they asked me to do. And that's what I tried to do.
and skipping a few months, obviously, then the Oscar.
Wow.
Never thought, I'm sure, in your wildest dreams, you'd be collecting an Oscar.
Never. I had never been to the Oscars. I don't even think I had ever even really watched the Oscars. Like, I grew up dreaming about the Grammys and being an artist and singing and stuff like that. So that's where my mind was. So to be at the Oscars long before I was at the Grammys and nominated, it's like, okay, is this really happening right now? It was very surreal.
Dreamgirls first arrived on Broadway in the early 1980s, a quarter of a century before hitting the cinemas. A film with a similar timeline is Les Miserables, one of the most successful stage shows of all time. It's the epic story of Jean Valjean, set during the French Revolution, that had musical fans flocking to cinema screens in 2012. They were eager to see if director Tom Hooper had captured the magic of the original, and the pressure to get it right meant normal casting rules didn't apply.
Even Russell Crowe, even Hugh Jackman, and Cameron McIntosh, who produced the film and was responsible for the musical itself. He said, "Oh, they should all audition," and I remember thinking, it's become so conventional to me, the idea that you can't ask a big star to audition, you just have to offer them, which is the Hollywood system, that I kind of laughed and thought, Cameron, this is never going to work. And he was right, actually, that we could say it was a special case. We could say with singing live, we can't have any surprises.
Who did you say next to?
I never say next to anyone. Because,
really?
Now, prisoner 24601, your time is up and your parole's begun. You know what that means.
Yes, it means I'm free.
Unless you learn the meaning of the law.
The singing in the movie was a revelation. Russell Crowe has a voice like an angel. Who knew?
Yeah, well, interestingly,
Is that a fair comment, would you
Russell say? had started off in musical theatre in Sydney, in the Rocky Horror Show.
How did he do at that?
And that was kind of where he got his breaks as an actor before his film career started. And it was, I remember having cast Hugh Jackman and thinking, well, for the film to have suspense, opposite Hugh, I've got to cast someone who the audience could well believe could vanquish Hugh Jackman. That's a very small list of people once you cast Wolverine. So it struck me that Gladiator was one of the few actors who could legitimately destroy Wolverine.
Ah, yes. Hugh Jackman may be best known for those Wolverine claws, but he can also pull off some fancy footwork, as seen in the 2017 smash hit, The Greatest Showman. The film tells the story of the legendary P.T. Barnum and was for Hugh a genuine labour of love.
I'm a ham. I'm a ham from way back, and somehow I feel really comfortable on a stage. I always have, and I was involved from the very beginning. So if I'm not good in this part, I literally will never be good again, because it was a dream for me, for all of us, Well, Zach's done it 4 times before, but to be in a movie musical is a dream, and it doesn't come along all that often. And so we spent 7 years. We wanted to do something original music, and I think the music is phenomenal. And we wanted to tell the story of the guy who pretty much invented show business. So this was it.
And I love how that story about that you were so gung-ho. Was it the first read-through where you couldn't help yourself?
It was... It was the final read-through. So we did 4 workshops over 4 years. Wow. So the final read-through, there were about 80 people, and every single one of them with a checkbook in there. Like, so it was, will this or will it not happen, based on this one performance. Yeah. We had an 8-piece orchestra. We had everyone there performing. And the day before, I had a skin cancer operation. So I've had 3 or 4 of them, and I had to get it done. And so I had 80 stitches in my nose, and I plastered up and said, great, I'm back to rehearsal, I've got to sing tomorrow. And he goes, the doctor's like, no, you can't sing tomorrow. Because the stitches may come apart. And I said, you don't understand, this is our make or break. I've got to sing. And he goes, you can't sing tomorrow. So I went in, made the announcement to everyone that I couldn't sing, and someone was there to sing the songs for me. But when it came to From Now On, which is the last number, I was just so taken up by the moment, I thought, I'll sing the first line. So I sang the first line, I sang the second line, I sang the third line, and then I was singing. And everyone seemed to be happy, and I was like, great. And I felt this trickle, and I went, uh-oh. And I went to and I went back to the doctor and had to have a bunch of those stitches redone. But worth it.
Definitely worth it, Hugh. And someone who'd second that, I'm sure, is the director of another, one of the most successful musicals of modern times, La La Land. Damien Chazelle's film, which starred Ryan Gosling and Oscar-winning Emma Stone, is, in many ways, a love letter to those great, glorious musicals of the past. And here's a hugely illuminating interview with Damien, which captures perfectly why he is such a fan.
Here's to the ones who dream, foolish as they may seem.
Damien Chazelle, hello.
Hi.
So did La La Land have to be a musical?
I mean, to me, it was always conceived of as a musical. What came first was, a musical in Los Angeles, and the barest of kind of bones for the storyline, the kind of arc I wanted it to take. That it would be a love story, and that it would be a love story about the ups and downs of love. City of stars. But it was always inseparable from the genre, and from what I wanted to do with the genre, which was, again, try to invest it with real life as much as possible.
There's so much that I can't see. Let me ask you about Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. I mean, does every musical have to have this great double act at its heart, or is that just every movie needs to have a great double act?
Certainly every love story. I mean, I think it was one of the wonderful kind of lucky strokes of casting them. There's that tricky thing, chemistry, where it's like an actor having to know when to listen, when to stop talking, then when to take over, when to lead, when to follow. It's like dancing. It helped that Ryan and Emma had worked together before, but I think they also ultimately are able to just ground it and make it human and make it feel real, and that was the most important thing of all.
I got a feeling you're fooling. I got a feeling you're having fun.
So if you're picking one movie from cinema history to make the case for the musical, Singing in the Rain, Top Hat?
Yeah, I mean, Singing in the Rain is hard to top. Became obsessed with Gene Kelly, and the idea of communicating love and emotion through dance was actually one of the most important things for me.
Broadway rhythm, it's got me. Everybody dance.
We're not used to dance musicals. We're not used to musicals, period anymore, but dance musicals especially, I think, are kind of an endangered species.
Broadway rhythm, it's got me. Everybody sing and dance.
Why do you think people fell out of love with musicals, or was it just the studios that fell out of love with them?
For better or for worse, in the 60s and going into the 70s, audience tastes changed. I think the mood was more, favoring verisimilitude and realism, and a certain idea of kind of over-the-top fantasy just sort of went out the window. with this movie, I guess I wanted to kind of have my cake and eat it too, you know, like take some of that fantasy, but try to actually have it be informed by realism.
Umbrellas of Cherbourg seems like a very big deal within the film, and that's the point, I guess, in the 60s where the musical becomes a little bit more real, but it's still all singing and all dancing.
Yeah, it's maybe my favorite movie ever made. I think it's one of several movies that I would pick to like showcase what a musical can do that only a musical can do.
Mon amour, oh mon amour,
Geneviève, ma petite Geneviève.
dis je t'aime. Tu sens l'essence.
It's such a simple story on paper, you know, and it's just a story of you know, a girl and a boy, and yet you set it to that music, you film it in the way that Demy filmed it, and it becomes this epic kind of meditation on love and loss and growing up.
Mon amour.
Je t'aime, je t'aime.
So it becomes all these bigger things, you know, but it's through, by virtue of being a musical. You can use the language of the musical to elevate the everyday, to elevate the small things in life. You can make anything feel like an epic with the right approach, and the musical as a genre, I think, is that kind of approach. It elevates our emotions to something grander.
There will be people watching who are still, even now, sceptical about the whole idea of a musical. So, I mean, if you have this platform to persuade them, so persuade them.
I think I would say that musicals are actually much closer to real life than we give them credit for. And we all live in our own little musical universes, you know, and we do use music and songs to sort of score our lives, and I think that's part of what the inherent appeal of the musical is.
Which is another way of saying, even if you don't want to admit it, that just like a couple in a film who meet and fall in love, there's a perfect musical out there for everyone. And if you haven't found yours yet, all you've got to do is keep on looking.